Well, good morning. I have to say I feel okay this morning. I slept really well. I did initially get up at 6:30 for a swim, but as this week has been dodgy, I thought, no, I wasn't going to do that. I still don't find it easy to decide not to do something like that. I still feel like, oh, maybe I should have. But I have to say that I felt the best I have felt all week, and I've had a pretty week. And I just thought to myself, no, you need to rest. You don't want to set anything off by going off your swim. I shall be going on Monday. I shall be going for the rest of next week. Anyway, I didn't get dressed this morning. Not properly anyway. It's a lot easier to pull on stuff than it is to button stuff up and do zips, and in fact, zips can be quite dodgy if you're not careful. And anyway, but look, I really like what I've got on. Can you see? And everything matches. I hope you are getting my trousers and not my groin. Anyway, I have to say that I really like the colours, particularly of the trousers. Now, they've had the trousers in for a while, and John pointed them out for me because he knows I like these sort of things. And I said, no, I'm not having those, it's got skulls on. And I said, I've already seen them, they've got skulls on, I don't want them. And then I started to think about, I bought them last night, and because I suddenly realised that how stupid of me, why shouldn't I buy them if they've got skulls on? It's to do with my old religious training, because they're demonic. It's really odd how your subconscious works, and that was the only reason I didn't want the bloody trousers, because they had a demonic symbol on them. It's like I used to read Stephen King books when I was a teenager, late teens, early 20s. And I was told that, you shouldn't read books like that because the minute you open them, demons jump out and they possess you. And that's why I was such a problem to people, because I was possessed by demons. And, I tell you, it was a very, very frightening time of my life. You could also make a comedy play out of it. I mean, you really could. The things that went on. Now, we're talking 1970... It was 78 or 9 that this happened. Now, my brother had gone the whole hog with the Jehovah's Witnesses and been baptised and everything, and he spent his whole time telling me how evil I was and how possessed I was. Now, according to my younger brother, who's is no longer a Jehovah's Witness, but one of these New Age gurus who charges thousands of dollars for you to go and listen to his wisdom. And yet you should see the vile stuff he writes to me. How much he hates me and would spit on my grave and dance on it. Yes, this is a New Age guru who's into family healing. But, I always bear in mind that he has the same family as I do. And he's as fucked up. Just he handles it differently. He finds it much easier to hate me than realise that our parents didn't love us. It's that simple. But anyway, he complains about my violence towards him, which he's absolutely right. I was violent towards him, but, he was constantly telling me I was possessed by demons and that I was evil. So of course I used to lash out. I was also very disturbed. Seriously disturbed. You may think I still am, but no, I was not a well person back then. And I'd been put on this terrible drug, absolutely terrible drug called haloperidol. Now you've got to bear in mind that back in those days, I hope it doesn't still happen now. The doctors were very happy to just give out drugs. It was the easiest thing to do. And this drug, haloperidol, is absolutely appalling. Just absolutely appalling. You take it in incredibly small doses, and it's supposed to be used for high anxiety. But it just makes you worse, far worse, much, much worse. And anyway, I hallucinated. And anyway, this one particular night, I was getting ready to go out. And I'd got myself all dressed up. And I was blow drying my hair in the mirror. Because I had hair in those days. Well, I mean, I've still got hair now. I could grow it long if I wanted to, but I keep it short. But I used to have a lot more hair, and it needed blow drying. And I was sitting blow drying my hair in front of a mirror, and all of a sudden this dog leapt out of the mirror at me. A really vicious, horrible dog, and it leapt out of a pool of fire. And, well, of course, I shit myself, practically. And I became very agitated, extremely agitated. And I thought, I have to go to the Kingdom Hall, I have to go to the Kingdom Hall. My brother was right, you know, I'm possessed by demons. Oh, he was right. And anyway, so I end up at Kingdom Hall, and I come bursting through the doors. And I fall on my hands and knees, and I beg them to release me from these demons. I mean, it wasn't funny from my point of view. It really wasn't. It was terrible. I'm laughing because of what it looked like from the other side and how they reacted, and my brother in particular. Because I can just... It really suits my sense of humour, the irony of it all. I mean, I will never forget it because I'll never forget that terror. It was awful. Really, if you've ever felt truly afraid. I have to say the terror was nothing like when I eventually recovered from all this shit. And the recovery process and the true terror I felt then. Really, it just... Anyway, but that's another story. So I go bursting into this Kingdom Hall and fall on my knees and I beg them to release me. And do you know what the bastards did? After spending all that time convincing me I was wicked and I needed delivering from these demons, they called a fucking ambulance. That says a lot about them. And of course my brother's mortified, absolutely mortified. You reap what you sow. See, it does tickle me. Of course it didn't for years. Basically not until I started the recovery process and I told that story to my therapist. And I began then to see how funny it was from the other side. Because if anything, I mean, it was his just desserts, wasn't it? For doing that. Anyway, so he hates me and wants to dance and spit on my grave because I used to bully him. Actually, it was response to him telling me how evil I was. Oh, and they also believe that you know, no one's homosexual. We're possessed by demons, and that's what makes us feel horny towards our own sex. I do wish people would give up on that stupid fucking idea. You know, it's about love. It's about... I'm sure there are men and women out there, straight men and women, and... Well, you all must experience this. You know that feeling you get when you're talking with somebody or you see somebody and they obviously press a button in you. You know, an attraction button of some sort. And they make you feel sort of hot in the face. And, well, maybe it's just me. But there are some men that are in my vicinity or that I just meet for whatever reason in a shop. It could be anywhere. That I start feeling really embarrassed and sort of uncomfortable when I'm talking to them and sort of hot in the face. It took a girlfriend to explain to me why that used to happen, because I was so dim I didn't know. But anyway, you can't stop things like that. It happens, you know. Anyway, but you know, it isn't really about sex. It's much more about... My best friends are women. They always have been and always will be. Because I relate to them and they relate to me. And I don't really have... I don't have the same conversations with men. Not even with John. Because, I mean, John is very much a straight man despite the fact that he's in love with me. but his whole demeanour and the way he thinks is just like a straight man. He uses the phone for a purpose, doesn't chat on it. Whereas, you know, I get on the phone, I can be on there for 3 hours. Well, actually I can't anymore, but I used to be able to. Now, you know, an hour at the most. But you phone people to chat to them. You don't phone people to say, yes, I'll see you, whatever, or yes, please do that form, or yes, you do make calls like that, but generally they're... Anyway, he's like that. And you ask him how was his day, and you're sort of expecting to tell you how he feels, and he'll tell you what he did, which isn't the same thing at all. A woman knows that. You ask a woman, or me, how was your day, and I'll tell you. And it'll all be about how I feel, and my girlfriends are the same. But that's just the way it is. And, you know, and people's stereotypes of gayness are also completely daft. I mean, I get quite a kick, and always have done, because it's always happened, when people know me and they don't know John, and then they meet John and they go, their mouth drops open, because he's as straight as they come, and they don't expect that at all. And an awful lot of women have also fancied him something rotten. And in fact, some of our friendships have gone down the pan because of that. Well, I can think of two that did. He's got a very deep voice. He's very kind and gentle. But anyway, it was my therapist that pointed out how different John and I were. And that... See, an awful lot of women think this about men, that they're somehow emotionally retarded. They just process differently. And I figured that out in the end, and I stopped trying to get him to be different. And in fact, I'm sort of glad he's not, because I don't think I could cope with somebody like me to live with. In fact, I'm for sure I couldn't. Anyhow, so going back to these, you know, I think back to, well, whenever I think about any of my childhood, it's always black. But I did have some good experiences, some really good experiences. I mean, when we arrived in Singapore, actually even on the flight to Singapore, I was about 8, I think, when we went there, something like that. I can't remember exactly the year, but we were there 4 years, and I left in 70 or 71. So I was about 8, yeah. And I'll never forget, because we used to fly in a Vickers VC-10, which was the RAF planes of the time. Not that my dad was in the RAF, he was in the army. And anyway, our first landing place was Bahrain. And I stepped out of the door of the airplane and got hit by this wall of heat. I'd never felt anything like it in my life. And that is what I vividly remember, is just immediately how hot it was. And then we landed in New Delhi, and what I thought about New Delhi, because I saw lots of men walking along holding hands, which is something that they do in India. And I thought, oh, this is a nice country. See, even at 8 I knew I was different. But I didn't understand in what way I was different. I just knew that my father hated me. And anyway, Singapore was, I mean, terrible things happened to me in Singapore, but lovely, exciting things happened too. It was a thrilling country for me. I mean, it was still, there was still a lot of jungle in those days, and there were still traditional homes. You know, it wasn't all concrete. It was homes made out of banana leaves and palm leaves, and not all. I mean, there were plenty of stone brick-built houses too, but it was quite a mixture. And palm trees all over the place, and it was steamy, and it was hot, and it was the street sellers with food and drinks, and we used to eat and drink and all that stuff. I never got sick. Well, actually I did. I got dengue fever, but I got it anyway. I mean, that had nothing to do with eating and drinking, I wouldn't have thought. Oh, I'll never forget that though. I remember clearly that illness. I was so ill, and ill enough to be hallucinating, and the feeling I got, I'll never forget. I was on the loo, and I can't describe this feeling, but it's sort of, see, I can't even begin to, but I do get that feeling every now and then. It comes back, and it comes back with an image, and it's all, and the image is sort of like of the moon with lots of craters. It's one of those really peculiar things, and it makes my body feel a particular way. It feels like my body is expanding. Very odd. Not frightening exactly, just very odd. Anyhow, and so there were the sights and sounds, and lots of people, and just really exciting. I mean, I used to play in the jungle, and you used to put a jar in the stream in the jungle, and that's how you got your tropical fish, and put them in the tank at home. Because of course they didn't need everything that they need in this country. You just put water in a tank and put the fish in, and that was that. You had filters, of course, but you didn't need heated. And anyhow, so I remember those things. I also remember dark things. It was when my father first almost killed me. I don't think that killing me was his intention, but his rage just used to get out of hand, completely out of hand. And I was accosted by sexually assaulted by a stranger in the jungle, an adult. And it was a very frightening situation to be in, and I didn't know what he was doing. Didn't understand what he was doing at the time. When he first approached me, I certainly knew what he was doing after that, because that wasn't the first time, although I don't really remember anything prior to that. But I knew that this wasn't a new experience for me. And anyway, the whole point to this is that this left me feeling quite unsettled, and I think prior to that I'd only ever felt afraid at home, not outside of home, and now there was reason to feel afraid outside of home, and that sort of really fucked me up completely. Yeah, safety is a huge issue for me, still. And really, I'm very lucky that John understands all these things, because, it can prevent me eating in a restaurant. I have to have my back to a wall and be able to see the whole restaurant, and particularly the entrance. I never knew this consciously. It all became sort of obvious what I was doing when you start to look. John will point these things out, when I've asked. Because I asked him what hypervigilant meant. I read it in a book. I didn't know what it meant, and I knew immediately I asked him that it obviously applied to me completely. And basically hypervigilance is when you're hypervigilant, basically like me, always looking around me and looking for every possible getaway or danger or whatever. I'd make a very good spy. I almost have eyes in the back of my head. That's what hypervigilance is, but it also causes a great deal of stress, because you live constantly waiting for the next shoe to fall, or whatever that expression is. But I'm not so much like that now. I still have, it's become sort of part of me, so it's not really a terribly stressful thing anymore. But I'm on alert, but without all the tension that goes with it, if that makes any sense. And Oh, anyway, as usual, I've gone off the plot. Yes, anyway, this situation with this man. And I never go into detail about stuff, by the way, because you never know who's watching. And it's not something I want people to get their jollies about. And besides which, the therapist I had is the only person who knows the details of the abuse, not just from him, from all of it. John certainly doesn't know, and he doesn't want to know, which is just as well, because I asked him about it. I said, look, I really, it's not something I want you to know. And he didn't want to know either. It was enough for him that he's seen the effects. But I don't want him to know, because I don't want him to be sullied by it. That's the best way I can describe it. It's got nothing to do with, I don't feel ashamed of it, and I just don't want him to know. There's no need for people who haven't been treated thus to know the details of it. Why should you be touched in that way? Sort of, it's enough for you to be aware of the evil. You don't actually have to know the details of it. That's what I think, anyway. And it was hard enough to tell one person, let alone anybody else. And anyway, I went off certain food products immediately. But I was a good boy and I never told. I kept my mouth shut. But wetting the bed, having nightmares, none of it. Well, I think that basically the reason none of it registered with my parents is because they didn't dare think that there might be something up with me, because they quite rightly thought, well, they'll get blamed, and they should have been. It was enough that all that was happening to me because of my father's violence, let alone anything else. Do you know what gets me the most about this? Is his complete denial of it. Not what he actually did. I can understand what he did. I mean, I understand what fueled him. I understand the shame that he felt, even though he was wrong, and that really he should have recognised that he had the problem. But I do understand. I certainly have had anger issues myself. I've never done what he did. I've never beaten up a 10-year-old child, or almost knocked them out, and stuff like that. And anyway, but it's just his complete denial of it. Anyway, getting back to this incident with the man in Singapore, I never told, of course, until something happened to the neighbour's child. And I personally think that what I did next was a very heroic thing for a child to have done. I really do. I think it took courage. I think it showed compassion. Where the fuck I got that from, I have no idea. I just did. And I got the general gist about what had happened to this child, and she'd been molested basically by a stranger. So I spoke up about this man. I told my mother, because I thought it was possibly the same man. See, I was willing to speak up to protect her, to help her, but not me. And my mother's reaction was to slap me and tell me I was filthy and disgusting, and that was that, basically. Nothing else came of it as far as I know. So you can imagine, I have never felt very good about sex, for all sorts of reasons. and had I been heterosexual, I would still feel the same way, because sex has always been something that you just don't do. I mean, don't forget, I was taught by the best nuns and priests who would teach that basically that sex was wrong, and that but it is something you had to do in order to produce a baby. And I remember in class once this bloody nun saying that, you know, girls wouldn't menstruate if they wouldn't pubertise. So I like making words up. They wouldn't pubertise if they didn't have unclean thoughts. If they kept their thoughts pure, they would never have a period. How fucking stupid. But this is the sort of stuff that gets taught to children. And, you know, where this idea came from, that Mary was also born without sin, where the fuck did that come from? And all this nonsense about praying to her. I mean, no wonder, I mean, alright, I think it's all bollocks. Lest anybody should think that I'm changing camps here, I'm not. It's all bollocks. And, you know, people go on about the Jehovah's Witnesses, but at least some of it, there was a logic, at least, to their views, which seems sadly lacking in the Protestant fundamentalism and Roman Catholicism. They're both just ridiculous. But I do see the point that, you know, why the Protestant fundamentalists really dislike Catholicism, because of the nonsense they've come up with. I mean, God, you know, there was God, Jesus and the Pope, although in practice it seemed to be the Pope, God, Jesus and Mary. That's the hierarchy. And I'll leave that for another day. So anyhow, there's always good and bad stuff, but most of my life I remember as being all wrapped up in this dark cloud, but not anymore. I mean, the last few years are really good, and becoming myself has been the most wonderful and exciting thing. I have to say that I do have regrets. I sometimes think, fuck, I'm 52 years old, why couldn't I have felt like this when I was 22 years old? Imagine what I might have done with myself. But I then remind myself, but you're still here, and you have been able to experience this, whereas other people, I know other people who killed themselves. There was this young man that we used to know. He threw himself off the tower block. And I'll never forget some fucking bitch's response to that. Whereas I said, you know, that he died as a direct result of abuse and as lack of help and lack of understanding from other people, and this woman turned around and said he knew what he was doing, he didn't have to do that, and she didn't have a fucking clue. Barbara her name was, and I'll never forget the callousness of her remark and the ignorance of it, and, you know, Michael was dead. Anyway, I know lots of people in my life who, you know, well, you see them on park benches, they commit suicide, or they're locked up in mental hospitals. I'm lucky, but yes, sometimes I think I wish I'd become myself a lot younger. And anyway, that's my ramblings for today, and I'll see you tomorrow probably. Bye.